What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to go over 3 different Xbox-related things. We've had the fallout kind of what has happened a few days ago, and a lot of different things have happened. I thought, okay, make video on this, make video on that. Let's just combine them, right? And some of these are more positive, I would say, than others. So let's start with probably the most positive one. Well, you could argue maybe. So Banjo-Kazooie has had quite an interesting arc, and I think I made a video on Podcast Now Plus when this happened. One of the things that came out like the same day as the disaster, that was whatever day that was we found out about this Banjo thing being put on the shelf, right? And I think Nate the Hate said that. So, it kind of separate almost from just the disaster of a day that was, but, it could have been related. It could have been something Rare was doing or something somebody was doing and was put aside. Okay, so we had not the greatest day and not the greatest week for Banjo-Kazooie, but now today we hear that actually Xbox and Rare have been taking pitches for Banjo, that they're actively listening, and they're always listening for when it comes to like cartoon type things and also movie potential and movie possibilities. So I swear to God, it's the same thing really for like Sly Cooper on the other side of the aisle. I'll take a show or a movie for Sly Cooper, but I swear to God, if you do that before you give me a new game, I'm gonna lose my effing mind. So Banjo, fine. At least it would show this interest in the brand, which is definitely valuable. Okay, all jokes aside, that is a very valuable thing. But that's great to hear. You know what I mean? And another rumor that kind of came from that is Toys for Bob has thrown their hat in the ring and tried to pitch or is pitching a Banjo game. Now that's really interesting because, and I believe it even without them saying it today, because we've already kind of heard the lead up to that. Toys for Bob, whenever they've done interviews, they've talked specifically about Banjo and how that is a franchise that deserves a comeback. Now, again, the talk around town is that Toys for Bob is doing Spyro 4, which I think deserves it, and it's a franchise I care about so deeply, so I want Spyro 4, but I think directly after that, or maybe if they can do 2 things at once, kind of asking a lot for a studio that just went independent, right? But whatever. Obviously, they did such a good job overall, maybe not at the very end, with Crash Bandicoot. If they went from doing what they did with Crash to then Spyro to then Banjo, what kind of saviors are we talking about here? Really elite ones. So I like to hear it. At the same time, I would still remain patient if I was a fan, which I am, and just say you just have to think about if Toys for Bob is pitching it, that's definitely a good sign, and maybe somebody else will pitch it and get it out sooner, which was could be a better thing. But if it's Toys for Bob, you're looking at probably another 2-3 years for Spyro 4, and then you're looking at another 3-4. So you're, no joke, you are probably talking about like 2031, 2032, etc. for like a Banjo comeback if it's Toys for Bob. So that's a good. Look, if you told me that was the year, again, let's go to Sly Cooper. If you told me that was the year, I know it's a long wait. Trust me, I can relate to it, but I would take it, because at this point, what else do we got? So that's the one really positive one. The other, I would say, pretty positive one, and maybe more positive depending on what you think of the developers and the game, is OD and Hideo Kojima, right? Talk Around Town. Talk Around Town here also started negative and then went positive towards the end. So when all of this stuff was happening, and I do think this was an opportunity for wannabe insiders to come out and kind of just say whatever they wanted, make Xbox look bad because they definitely looked bad, that day, and try to spin it and try to, gain clout from it. Understandable. I wouldn't do it myself, but I guess I can get why they were doing it. But there was a rumor, really the day Xbox was doing these layoffs, that OD was not going to be published by Xbox anymore, and Kojima would start to shop it around. Now, may I just say, if that happened, that would be one of the stupidest ideas that you could possibly do. Look, Xbox made a lot of dumb decisions just a few days ago with ZeniMax's game, which I want to talk about, and that's kind of part 3 here. It seems like they made a lot of bad choices, at least at times, and you look even back to okay, well, why would they drop like a Hideo Kojima and OD? I don't know. Why did they destroy Tango Gameworks after Hi-Fi Rush? They've done this not exactly before, but they have done it before in a sense. So it's not insane to believe. It's probably somewhere in the middle of like, I didn't believe it in the moment, but I also didn't fully not believe it, where it's like, well, they have done things that would make me question their sanity. So, again, that was kind of the early part, is that they had dropped it and that Kojima would shop it around. And then, later on in the day, I think Windows Central, I think Jez Corden talked about, I think he's looking into Contraband, by the way. Who knows where that game is? But, he was kind of checking in on each game, and he said OD is still fine and OD is still being published by Xbox. It does connect to like, it brings up the interesting stuff that we talked about a few weeks ago with Kojima talking about the future and skipping OD when he does it. And it's like, because that Metal Gear type game he's going to make is in collaboration with PlayStation. Death Stranding is in collaboration with PlayStation. These movies and stuff are Death Stranding, so in a sense. And then he wants to do a movie, right? So when he was talking on that Death Stranding 2, press tour, he always skipped OD. And there's still a sense to me where it's like, I could hear either side. I personally think he's not bringing up OD because, like, why would you? You're on a PlayStation type tour, and you'd be talking about a game that would be, at the very least, published by Xbox, but also might be in some form an Xbox exclusive. I don't think that, but I definitely, obviously, it's going to be Xbox published. So that's how I always looked at it, is him not talking about OD was simply because, maybe he signed a contract that he couldn't do it, or maybe that was just a handshake agreement where it's like, hey, you're promoting Death Stranding, we don't want you promoting OD, and you're promoting Death Stranding, a PlayStation thing, we don't want you talking about an Xbox thing. So I always thought it made sense, but it's good to hear. It's good to hear at least that, like, I don't care who it's published by, to be honest with you, just get the game out, okay? Like, he deserves to do this pure horror game. I don't care who is going to put it out into the world. He's the one creating it. Just let him put it out into the world. So that's good news as well. Wanted to end it, though. Let's end it with the negative stuff. So, the ZeniMax thing I mentioned briefly, and this all kind of connects because this is like the fallout of the layoffs, right? So, like, number one, that ZeniMax game, the first rumor I saw about it, I mean, we've got a lot of rumors of like what the type of game that it was. I saw like Titanfall like in terms of how it moves. I think I see like Force-like powers. It sounded like a wild game, okay? So number one, I mean, I'm disappointed when any game is canceled because it's like, no matter how good or bad, it's like a missed opportunity. So, not pleased with that or anything. Perfect Dark, that was canceled as well. I guess that was another one, Perfect Dark. There was the back and forth of like everything that we saw up until this point was actually fake. It wasn't the real game, and then that was kind of shut down by them, and they said no, like, you could actually play what we saw at last year's Xbox showcase. You couldn't play it incredibly well, but you could play it. And it's like, all right, that game probably was like 4 or 5 years out, so in a sense I get why you'd maybe want to pull the plug on it, but I still wanted it. Okay, that's still a game. So you have those two, and the ZeniMax thing was interesting because one of the first things we heard about it was it's like the game of the generation. It's one of the best games they've ever played. And look, I want to believe it, and I think we've heard enough from different sources that the ZeniMax title was super good. I think somebody said even Phil Spencer himself really, really liked it. So we heard it from enough people, but I will say, just as like a funny joke, like a set aside, we've heard like Redfall was talked about as like this game of the generation behind closed doors, right? Honestly, a lot of games that come out to be garbage, I mean, I guess it kind of depends. Sometimes you'll hear like the Naughty Dogs leading into The Last of Us, right? That the game doesn't even come together until the last 3 weeks. They think it's terrible until the last month, and all of a sudden it's good. So to be fair, like, you do have back and forth in both sides. But we have heard plenty of games that were like bad that have, and Redfall being like a recent, and it's Xbox, right? So it checks a lot of boxes that compares it. We've heard a lot of like, oh, well, this did so well behind the scenes. Everybody loved it. How could we have? Oh, Concord is a great one from the other side, right? From PlayStation. Oh my God, what the heck happened? It was going so well up until it released and everybody actually got to play it. So, you do have to take it, I think, with a little bit of a grain of salt. I don't think the ZeniMax MMO would have been a 10 out of 10 game of the generation game. Was it probably pretty good? Probably, but you can never fully say, to be honest with you. But, it does suck, and again, I just kind of wanted to connect those stories. I guess the final thing, which is probably the worst part, or the worst rumor, I guess, of this whole situation. So there was a rumor, there's been a couple rumors as to like why they did this. And one prevailing one, I think like the Seattle Times, I don't even know who they are. Well, obviously they're in Seattle, but we got a couple people saying this. I think they were the first one to do it. in that AI actually plays a big part in this, and they want to build or continue to build, whichever one, I guess. They want to continue to build this AI infrastructure for their company, to really continue to / go full on and rely on AI. So they're using a lot of this money that they're cutting with all of these people that they let go and all these games they canceled, and they're putting that into AI infrastructure. So again, that's a rumor. Originally it was only kind of by one person. Now it seems to be like multiple people have said, yeah, actually like look towards AI as like the reason why they did this. I would hope to God that it was a mix. I mean, like, I don't want to give them like a pass on any of it in the first place, because you can go back to leadership decisions and all sorts of stuff, but I guess that's kind of the point, right? Please, for the love of God, make this be why they did this was a combination of like 10 different things. Do not make this, oh, it was one specific thing, right? Because then that just looks really bad, right? It's like, well, we want to invest in AI. That was the main reason. Swear to God, though, if it really was to go kind of full into AI, it's not going to work. It really is not. I mean, I've long said you work in collaboration with it. I do think AI can be used in game development to not necessarily, when I say improve, I want to say the word improve. I guess I mean like kind of streamline things and make things go by quicker, because if you can have human beings doing the heavy work and AI does a lot of the almost lazy work, the stuff that pads out game development time, I mean, look, they're going to force AI on you anyway. That's the best way to do it, right? You work with AI, you don't work against it, or you don't have AI be the entire thing. There's got to be like a nice harmony, and I honestly just don't think any other way is going to work. I think that you're going to lose that corporate fight of fighting against it forever. That's not going to work. And then letting AI just make the whole game, that's not going to, or be like, say, like a 70% of the game, and then the humans are 30%. It's going to lead to atrocious games. It's going to fail. The best way of doing it is not even 50-50. It's probably like 80-20, and the 20% is, again, like that dirty work, the work that really just takes a lot of time and it's tedious and stuff. For any department in a game developer, that's what you make AI do. So, I don't want to go too much into that, but I mean, like, that hopefully is the future. And I think that's the most like harmonious, that's one of the biggest words I've ever said in my life, future that you can get to, right? Hopefully it's that. Hopefully it's not the other stuff. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.